It's the kind of night where everything feels a little heavier. Not just your body, though. Yes, it's tired. But the kind of tired that doesn't disappear just because you lie down. Your thoughts have their own rhythm tonight, don't they? Looping through what you forgot to do, what you wish you hadn't said, what you can't seem to fix. And it's quiet, but not the peaceful kind. It's the kind of quiet where your heart still beats too loudly in your chest. The kind of quiet that lets loneliness pull up a chair and stay a while. Maybe it's anxiety or grief or a mind that just won't shut down. Maybe you've been holding your breath all day, pretending you're fine. Maybe you're just looking for a voice in the dark, something steady, something soft, something that doesn't need anything from you. You're not alone here. You're safe. And tonight we're going back not to fairy tales, not to grand ballrooms, but to the quiet reality of queenship. A crown, yes. Jewels, yes. But also cold stone rooms, loneliness dressed in silk, and entire days where the most exciting thing was embroidery and maybe hearing a lute. You open your eyes to the muted gray of morning light slipping through a narrow tower window. No glass, just open air and wind that always finds its way in. Your bed is wide but stiff. Layers of quilts press against your legs, but your nose is cold. You don't remember waking. That's common now. The bells haven't rung yet, but already your day is shaped by others. You'll be told what to wear, what to say, where to sit. You'll nod, smile, practice stillness. A maid enters without knocking because queens don't get privacy, only attendance. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. You hold out your arms as she laces the stiff bodice, tightens, sleeves, smooths your veil. You've worn so many beautiful things, and yet none of them have ever felt like you. You sit by the window. Not for the view. There's mostly fog and roof tiles, but because it's the only place you feel near the world. You wonder what people imagine when they think of you. Do they picture grand feasts and power and pleasure? Would they believe you if you said most days are slow scripted and cold? Your hands are always cold. The hall is already being prepared. A visiting noble, a contract, a dinner that will taste of duty. You'll nod at things you didn't choose. Smile for people who don't see you just the title, the gown, the crown. And yes, you are powerful in theory. But every decision passes through men. Every whisper around you is measured. Even your pregnancies aren't your own. They're watched, tracked, politicized. You once loved to sing, quietly, when no one listened. But queens don't sing, they host, they wait, they endure. And somehow this isn't a tragedy. It's just life. The version of royalty you were born into. Not tragic, not glorious. Just long, quiet days in beautiful cages. If this voice makes you feel a little less alone, you can like or subscribe, only if it helps. No pressure. Can I ask, where are you right now? Sitting upright in bed, one leg tangled in the blanket. lying flat, trying not to cry for no reason you can explain. Or maybe you're just here because silence felt too sharp and this voice feels safer. Wherever you are, you're allowed to be exactly that. Let your shoulders drop. Loosen your jaw. Let your thoughts float without grabbing hold of any of them. There's nowhere else you need to be. No one you need to impress. Tonight we'll walk beside the crown, not to admire its shine, but to understand the weight beneath it. Let's begin. Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a life that sounds glamorous on the outside, but inside, it's tight-laced, drafty, and surprisingly lonely. You're the queen. Not just any queen, the queen. And yet, your life is less about jewels and more about judgment. Your mornings begin not with golden sunbeams and flutes playing by the window, but with stiff fabrics, whispered instructions, and the heavy expectation that today you'll be flawless. Again. And most of the time, you don't even get to sleep in. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't open your eyes slowly. You're woken with intention. Servants enter your room like a soft tidal wave. Slippers, padding curtains, drawn braziers tended. You keep your eyes closed for one more breath, savoring that last second of warmth under the wool blankets. The bed isn't even soft. Royal doesn't mean comfortable. It means large, decorative, and cold. There are 4 posters, but they don't stop the draft from slipping in. You are in the grandest room of the castle, and somehow still shivering. Your ladies in waiting greet you with gentle murmurs. One begins brushing your hair, 100 strokes each, tugging slightly like your thoughts are being pulled from your scalp. Another is already laying out your garments: chemise, kirtle, overgown, jewelry, veil, girdle. You'll wear so many layers today, you'll feel like a particularly nervous onion. You rise, but not alone. They help you sit, help you stand, help you wash your hands with rose-scented water poured from a jug. You whisper a thank you that no one hears, or rather, they hear it, they just don't expect it. Queens don't thank. They don't weep. They don't speak first. You do anyway, because it reminds you you're human. A tray appears, your breakfast. Bread, cheese, possibly yesterday's, cold. The kitchen's fire is far from your chamber, and royal food takes a long walk through stone corridors. The jam is good. Plum, maybe. You eat it quietly while your steward begins reading the day's schedule. There's no time to talk. There's barely time to chew. You nod in the right places. The ambassador from Burgundy is coming. Again, the bishop wants a word. Again, there's an embroidery circle. You'll sit in the center and smile, and smile, and smile. You lift the goblet of watered wine, but put it down again. Not today, not yet. You can't risk the flushed cheeks. Not with courtiers watching for cracks. There's a brief pause. You lean back and close your eyes. A moment stolen. You imagine being anyone else. A shepherdess, maybe. Someone who wakes with the sunrise, walks barefoot, in grass, eats apples without ceremony. Then you remember shepherdesses don't have feather beds, even cold ones. You sigh. You rise. Your gown is heavy, embroidered with gold thread that glints in the morning gloom. You walk slowly, not for effect, but because you have to. The shoes pinch. The floor is cold. Every step echoes like a judgment. Outside, your chamber guards nod. Courtiers bow. Pages scurry like anxious squirrels. You don't return the smiles, not because you're cruel, but because your face already hurts from holding itself so carefully upright. A child stumbles in the hallway, not yours, some noble's second-born. He drops a toy horse and scrambles to pick it up before you pass. You want to kneel, to help him, but the protocol is ironclad. Queens don't bend, unless it's to God or the Pope. You pass a tapestry you've seen 1,000 times. A lion, a unicorn, a tree bearing pears. You wonder who chose it. You wonder if the unicorn is lonely. The hallway is lit by high windows. Pale light cuts through dust motes, like the divine is trying to reach in and offer you a hand. You'd take it, but all you get is another bow, another nod, another step. Historians still argue whether queens had real power or simply ceremonial presence. The truth, it varies. Some wrote letters that shaped nations. Some whispered in their husband's ear and moved armies. But most just endured, smiled through boredom, sat still through discomfort, nodded through exhaustion, and hoped desperately that no one saw the crack behind the crown. You reach the audience chamber. Your throne waits. Not a grand gilded thing, but a stiff chair with carved arms and a cushion that feels like it's stuffed with cold regret. You sit, composed, measured, a living statue. Ambassadors arrive, speak in circles, reference treaties you weren't consulted on. You nod anyway. You say, "Yes, I understand," even when you don't. You ask polite questions about whether trade poetry. They smile. They bow. They try not to look too long at your eyes where fatigue gathers like ink pooling in old parchment. And through it all, you remain silent inside. Because queens don't get to say they're tired or cold or scared. You glance toward the window. Somewhere a bird sings. Somewhere the sun rises on a cottage where someone is laughing loudly, openly, barefoot. But not here. Here, you are the queen, and it's only 10 a.m. There's a moment, just a brief one, when you wish you could wear nothing at all. Not because you want to be rebellious, not because you want freedom, but because you're tired. Tired of the layers, the weight, the quiet oppression of tightly stitched seams and bodices that press your ribs into submission. But queens don't wear simple tunics. Queens wear symbols, even when they can barely breathe. You stand still, arms out, obedient, not because anyone said you must, but because this is how it's always been done. The dressing process begins like a ritual. The undercamise, first pale linen soft, but already a little damp from being near the fireplace too long. It goes over your head, down to your ankles. It's the only garment that feels remotely like yours. Next, the stays. Not quite corsetry, not yet, but close enough to be annoying. Thick bands stiffened with reeds or bone cinched tightly enough that your breath shifts into shallow territory. One lady in waiting pulls the ties. Another holds your waist. You exhale on cue. The fabric sighs as it tightens. You don't. Then the kirtle. A second dress, really. Heavier, embroidered along the sleeves and neckline. It slides over your head like a cloak of responsibility. You used to love this one. It has tiny stitched roses along the hem, but now the thread is faded and the skirt rustles like dry leaves when you walk. Another tug at the waist, another adjustment at the shoulder. Someone smooths the sleeves. Someone else adds a brooch. Then comes the overgown, the real showpiece. It's red today, crimson velvet with gold-threaded cuffs. Worn, not because you like it, but because the ambassador visiting today has a known fondness for bold colors. You're dressing for diplomacy, not comfort. You always are. Jewelry next. Earrings, shaped like miniature lions. A girdle that rests low on your hips. A sign of status, not fashion. A sign that you own land, even if you never walk across it barefoot. Rings on 3 fingers. One too big, one too tight. One that once belonged to your husband's mother and still smells faintly of rose water and judgment. Your hair is braided tightly, not by choice. The veil won't sit properly otherwise. It pulls at your scalp, feels like it's tugging your thoughts backward. You close your eyes as they pin it in place. 7 pins, one for each virtue you're supposed to embody. Or was it each sin you're supposed to avoid? You forget. You reach for a comb just to feel like you've done something for yourself. You drag it once through the edge of your braid, but someone takes it gently from your hand and finishes the stroke. You let them. It's easier that way. By the time it's done, you've been standing for over an hour. Your back hurts. Your toes have gone cold. The room is warm, but your skin never is. There's something about velvet that traps air, but not warmth. You shiver. No one notices. One final mirror check. You look at yourself and try to imagine how others see you. Regal, untouchable, collected. But you know the truth. Underneath the silk and symbolism, you are just a woman wearing a costume so elaborate it forgets you have skin beneath it. Historians still argue whether queens chose their clothing or had it chosen for them, whether they had real say in their appearance or merely curated the illusion of power through fabric. You know the answer. Oh, it depends. On the court, the country, the century. But mostly, it depends on the Queen's willingness to barter comfort for control. You adjust a sleeve, not because it's out of place, but because it gives you something to do with your hands. Something small, something yours. You consider asking for a shawl, but then again, the shawl from last week made your neck itch and left red marks. No shawl then. Someone presents your gloves, pale leather, soft as butter. You slide your fingers in one by one and flex them gently. The gloves are your favorite part, not because they're beautiful, but because they are the final piece. Once the gloves are on, the costume is complete. Once the gloves are on, you are officially not yourself anymore. You press your hands together and nod. Everyone in the room straightens. Their task is done. You are transformed, but you don't feel transformed. You feel padded, pressed, preserved like a fruit in syrup. No room to breathe, no room to rot, room to... You walk to the door. The gown sways with a life of its own. The train whispers secrets behind you. You wonder what they'd say if gowns could talk. Probably something like, "She wore me for 12 hours and never sat down." You pass your dressing mirror one last time. You glance, then look away. Queens are not supposed to look uncertain. And yet, behind the veil, behind the embroidery, behind the gloves, there is still you. And she misses simple cotton dresses and wind in her hair. You don't remember the last time breakfast was warm, or hot, or served to you by someone who actually asked what you liked. You'd kill for eggs honestly, soft steaming with herbs on top. But today, like most days, your breakfast arrives lukewarm on a polished wooden tray. Flatbread, a slice of salty cheese, a dollop of fruit preserve that's probably plum, and watered wine that tastes like someone whispered grapes into a cup of rain. The plate is beautiful, hand-painted, gold rim, maybe even imported from Venice. But the bread is still dry. You sit in the small receiving room just off your private chamber. Your gown is too heavy to let you lean comfortably, so you perch, regal spine, folded hands, chin slightly lifted. It's not a dining posture. It's a performance. Even when the audience is only your steward and two overly alert ladies in waiting who pretend to busy themselves with embroidery while watching everything. The steward reads from the scroll. He rarely makes eye contact. Maybe he thinks if he doesn't look directly at you, you won't ask questions. You learned long ago that questions are rarely welcome, especially before noon. There's a mist tithe from the western villages. The Bishop of Reims has sent a gift, a carved cross, and a very long letter about penance. A visiting noble has requested to speak with you in private. You file that away for later dread. One of your cousins, honestly, you lose track which one is ill. Not critically, just inconveniently. No one asks how you slept. No one ever does. The cheese is tangy, crumbles on the tongue. You bite it, slowly, carefully. Your teeth are strong now, But in 10 years, who knows? Queens have no exemption from age. Eleanor of Aquitaine, famed as she was, still lost her molars eventually. Historians like to focus on her political shrewdness. They don't mention she probably gummed her food for the last decade of her life. You place the goblet down and pick up a napkin that's too fine to actually wipe anything with. You pretend to dab the corner of your mouth, even though it's clean. It's a signal. You're finished. But no one moves. There's more. One of your ladies clears her throat. Says the kitchen boy dropped a bowl this morning. Porcelain. Broke it clean in two. She says it like a tragedy, like a personal affront. You nod solemnly. You don't care. You want to say, has he hurt himself? But queens don't ask about kitchen boys, not unless they're poisoning someone. You rise, slowly, gracefully. Even the act of standing is layered with meaning. You walk past the food you didn't finish and wonder if anyone will eat it later. Probably not. Too royal now. Even though it's just cheese and bread, you make your way through the inner corridors. The palace is a strange place full of echoes and quiet whispers and tapestries that watch you. Sometimes you think the walls listen more closely than the people. Your next stop isn't exciting. You'll sit again this time in a small salon with 3 older ladies who never quite learned to enjoy silence. They'll prattle about wool, about grandchildren, about the king's latest treaty, which they neither read nor understand. You'll smile, nod, maybe stitch a few lines on the never-ending embroidery sampler that's more patchwork alibi than art. You glance down at your skirts. The hem has dust on it already. You'll need a new gown by afternoon. Again, historians still argue whether queens had meals alone or with retinues, whether they truly managed household logistics or simply presided over them. Like grand decorations, it probably depended on the queen. But the loneliness, that seems universal. Whether you dined in a grand hall or at a side table, whether you had servants hovering or sat with your sister, there was a wall, not of stone, of silence, of roll. You pass the great window. The sun is higher now. People in the courtyard are moving faster. Servants guards a scribe holding too many scrolls. You envy them, not because their lives are easy, but because they are theirs. If a servant wants to be angry, she can scowl. If a guard is tired, he can yawn. If you do either, it's noted, remembered, whispered about. There's a soft clatter behind you, a dropped tray. One of the younger ladies flushes red bends to pick it up, whispers an apology. You smile at her, not because you have to, because you know what it feels like to drop something in a world that demands perfection. You make it to the salon. Sit. Accept tea that's been steeped too long. You hold the cup anyway. It's warm. Your mind drifts while the women chatter. Something about a new tapestry being woven in the north. Something about the harvest festival. Something about an herbal remedy that keeps husbands docile. That one earns a laugh. You offer a polite chuckle. You've heard the same joke 5 times this month. One of them asks about your daughter. You blink. You hadn't heard the name spoken aloud in days. You say she's well. You say she enjoys riding. You say nothing of the fact that you haven't seen her since Tuesday, that she cried the last time you left, that you don't even know if her tutor is kind. You sip the tea. It burns. You let it. You are seated on an ornate wooden chair that looks more impressive than it feels. The cushion has gone flat over years of royal posteriors, and you can feel the carved wood press into your shoulder blades if you lean too far. Across from you, a man with a beard shaped like he measured it with string is talking about land. You're not sure where. Somewhere west of somewhere else near a river you've never seen. He gestures to a map, rolls it out dramatically on a table you're not allowed to touch, and begins explaining why a marshland you've never heard of is strategically significant. You nod, not because you agree, because you've learned that nodding makes them stop sooner. This is your third audience of the day. The first was with a bishop who smelled like wine and holy guilt. The second was with your steward who gave you a detailed report on wheat. Wheat. You've never grown wheat, never planted a seed, but you nodded through that too. This one at least has pictures. You glance at your hands, gloves off, rings gleaming in the morning light. You twist one absent-mindedly. It squeaks against your knuckle. The man stops mid-sentence. He thinks you're about to speak. You're not. But you raise your eyebrows a little. That does the trick. He changes topics. Now he's talking about taxation. Of course. There's a notary behind him, scribbling furiously. You wonder what it's like to be the person who gets to write things down instead of pretend to understand them. Then again, that notary probably hasn't eaten fresh fruit since last summer. So, pros and cons. Your eyes flicker to the window. Sunlight has moved. You calculate the time not by a clock, but by the shadow that now falls across the stone lion's face. Soon you'll be expected to smile at someone else. Historians still argue how much real power queens had in court. Some insist you were the soft voice behind the throne. Others think you were a pawn decorative, movable, expendable. Maybe both are true. Maybe it changes day to day. Maybe you're only powerful when no one is paying attention. The man across from you finally stops talking. He bows. You incline your head. He leaves. You don't remember his name. Next, a woman is ushered in. She's tall, composed, wearing a dark green gown that fits a little too well for comfort. A duchess, you think, or a marchioness. She curtsies too low, the kind that says, "I'm being polite, but I'm watching you." You smile, the kind that says, "Try me." She brings news. Her son is getting married. To a cousin of yours, perhaps. She mentions a dowry, then lingers. You know this routine. She wants something. Land. A favor. A title. You wait. There it is. A request for endorsement. She wants you to write a letter. A gentle suggestion to your husband, the king. Just a few lines. Just your handwriting. Just enough to tip the scales. You don't say yes. But you don't say no. Instead, you change the subject. Ask about her new tapestries. She answers, surprised. Then she relaxes. People love to talk about things they own, but didn't make. It's a universal truth of nobility. Eventually, she leaves, thanking you, smiling. You know she'll tell people the Queen was gracious today. You also know she'll write to your husband herself. The door closes. You exhale. One of your ladies offers you a sugared fig. You take it, not because you want it, because you need something sweet to break the taste of diplomacy. Your throat is sore. You haven't spoken much, and yet you feel like you've been shouting for hours. Smiling is hard work when it's done with the eyes. You stretch your fingers. One ring has left an indent, a small reminder that even ornaments leave marks. More visitors are listed on the scroll, but you wave it away. You're allowed 1 hour, just one, to yourself. You rise. The hem of your gown swishes like a sigh. You walk down the corridor with just 2 ladies trailing you discreet like shadows. You're not alone, but it's the closest you'll get. You find the garden. It's manicured, symmetrical, beautiful in that aggressively curated way. Roses, trimmed like soldiers, paths swept clean, the fountain trickling politely, like even water knows not to misbehave in royal presence. You sit, not on the bench, on the edge of the low stone wall. It's slightly scandalous. A queen's backside should never touch bare stone. You do it anyway. And for a moment, you're just sitting. No one asks you anything. No one hands you a letter. No one speaks. You look up at the sky. Blue. Cloudless. The kind of sky that feels infinite until someone reminds you of your schedule. It doesn't last long. Nothing does. But for 5 minutes you remember that you have a body, a face that feels the sun, hands that can still pick a flower if no one's watching. The fig was sweet, but this is sweeter. You hear them before you see them. The soft rustle of silk skirts, the clicking of heeled shoes on gravel, a throat cleared politely enough to be considered reverent. Your ladies have come to fetch you, not because they want to, but because the schedule does not forgive. You rise slowly, brushing your gloved fingers along the stone beside you. It's still warm from the sun, and for a fleeting second, you think of what it might be like to lie flat on that stone, to feel the heat seep into your spine and lull you into sleep. But queens do not nap in gardens, at least not without consequences. You return to the corridor, to the shadowed cool of the palace where fresh air struggles to outwit incense. You walk ahead. The others follow. You've never run, not since you were 12, and it shows in the way your walk is always precisely measured 3/4, regal 1/4, survival mechanism. Somewhere between gliding and bracing. Your destination is the chapel. Today there is a short service. Short is subjective. The priest has a flair for metaphor and a fondness for Latin phrases that no one else understands, but everyone pretends to. You find your seat at the front, on the cushioned bench, that offers about as much support as wet parchment. You cross your ankles at the right angle, hands folded, eyes half lowered. The organ begins its slow complaint. A hymn follows one you've known since girlhood, but no longer feel. It washes over you like lukewarm bathwater. Not unpleasant, just forgettable. The priest drones on about duty, piety, suffering as virtue. You're quite the expert in all three. You wonder if he ever notices how his sermons sound like instructions for queens more than spiritual reflections. Historians still argue about the religious authority of queens. Some claim you were spiritual figureheads, protectresses of faith and virtue. Others think you were merely symbolic, like the gilded crosses carried in processions. Holy, yes, but hollow. A young page kneels beside you with a silver basin. Holy water. You dip 2 fingers, cross yourself. The water is cold enough to startle. For a moment, you're fully present. Then the chill fades and you fade with it back into observation. You glance at the stained glass. It tells stories, most of which end in martyrdom or miracles. Queens get neither. At best, a footnote in someone else's legend. After the service, a line of noble women awaits your blessing. Not a literal one, just a glance, a word, an acknowledgement that you've seen them and therefore they matter. You nod, smile. Say something vague like, "May peace be upon your house." It's a script, one that never changes even when the names do. You are offered a sprig of rosemary, a gift from a young girl barely old enough to curtsy. You take it. Inhale. It smells like memory, like kitchens and old gardens and hands wrinkled from age, not duty. You thank her. She beams. For a moment you remember what it was like to give something without needing anything in return. The rosemary stays in your hand as you make your way back through the palace. Your afternoon now belongs to correspondence. Letters to write, letters to read, letters to burn. You sit at your writing desk, angled perfectly to catch natural light. A scribe waits nearby in case you need him, though you rarely do. You prefer writing yourself. The act of pressing pen to parchment feels oddly grounding, like digging your heels into soft dirt and refusing to be carried away. The first letter is to a cousin abroad, courteous, predictable. You mention the weather, the condition of the court, and a vague hope for peace. The next is to your daughter's tutor, carefully worded, gently, firm. You ask whether she is reading aloud daily, whether her penmanship is improving, whether she is happy. You sign the letter with your full name, even though he knows who you are. Then comes the third letter. This one is to your husband. You pause. You always pause before writing to him. Not because you fear him. That's a different kind of silence. This one is about precision, about knowing that every word might be read not just by him, but by a dozen others before it reaches his eyes. You write about court matters. You mention the Duchess's visit. You suggest a possible alliance. You do not mention the ache in your joints or the way your nights feel longer now. that is not what queens write about. Still, when you seal the letter, you press the wax hard, just to feel something yield. The rosemary lies beside you, slightly wilted now. You twirl it once between your fingers. You wonder what would happen if you planted it. If something beautiful might grow in this place. You doubt it. But still you keep it. You don't choose your dinner companions. That decision is made somewhere above your rank, which is amusing, because technically no one outranks a queen. And yet, here you are, seated at a long oak table between a general with bad breath and a dowager who smells like the inside of a velvet chest. The food is spread out like a festival feast, though you'll only pick at it. Venison, pigeon pie, poached pears. You don't actually taste most of it. Eating in public is performance, not pleasure. You chew delicately, sip lightly, and smile when someone makes a joke that might be offensive if you listen too closely. You dab your lips, not because they need dabbing, because everyone expects the queen to be graceful even while swallowing. A servant refills your goblet. You nod slightly. The wine is sharp today, aged enough to feel noble, but not enough to be kind. You sip again. Another toast rises. Another cheer for something you had nothing to do with. You raise your glass anyway, because that's what queens do. Raise, smile lower, repeat. The general beside you leans in, smelling of leather and salt. He talks about a skirmish near the border, uses the word glory a little too often. You nod, pretend to care. You've met 4 generals this month. 3 of them described bloodshed like it was music. One cried into your lap when he thought no one would see. Historians still argue whether royal women influenced military decisions or were merely decorative symbols at war councils. Some think queens whispered strategy behind closed doors. Others suggest your only role was mourning the dead afterward, in public and in poetry. Your role tonight is far more mundane. Keep the mood elevated. You're meant to laugh at the right lines, frown at tales of hardship, and tilt your head just so when asked a direct question. And when the string quartet starts always halfway through the main chorus, you're supposed to smile as if this was your favorite song. You don't even know what it is. You excuse yourself earlier than expected. A faint headache, you say. They all nod, understanding. It's the queen's prerogative after all. But as you walk out, you hear the laughter rise higher, easier. They always laugh louder once you're gone. Back in your chambers, you remove the crown pins from your hair one by one, each pull slightly catching at the root. A reminder that even ornaments dig in eventually. Your maid helps you out of your gown. The brocade clings from the heat. Underneath the linen shift is damp. She asks if you'd like a bath. You nod. The tub is wood, rimmed with bronze, filled from steaming pitchers, carried 2 at a time by servants with practiced arms. You sink slowly, not because it's hot, but because everything in you resists the idea of relaxation, like your body forgot how. The room smells faintly of lavender and old stone. You close your eyes. For a second, you imagine this is not a queen's bath, but just a bath. No one watching, no duties waiting, no decisions to pretend to understand, just water and warmth. But then your maid speaks softly, apologetically, about tomorrow's schedule. You nod. Of course, always tomorrow, even when today isn't done unraveling. You dry off. She braids your hair loosely. You ask her about her mother. It surprises her. She stammers, says she's well. You thank her anyway. She leaves quickly, not knowing what to make of your kindness, or maybe fearing it. You're alone now, truly. The fire crackles. You sit in the chair by the hearth robe, wrapped tightly around you. Your fingers brush the embroidered armrest, the same pattern as your wedding robe, though you didn't notice until just now. You remember your wedding, not the joy. That's not what weddings were for. You remember the weight of the crown, the incense in the chapel, the way everyone called it a great match. You also remember the ache in your jaw from holding the same smile all day. You close your eyes. There's a soft knock. One of the younger servants. She brings a letter, no seal, probably a poem, or a plea, or another noble trying to marry a second cousin into power. You place it on the table unopened. Tomorrow will come soon enough. You rise slowly, climb into bed. The sheets are clean but cold. You pull the furs close. The mattress dips slightly, like it always does in that one spot near your left hip. You stare at the ceiling, listen to the wind outside. It taps against the shutters like a question you're too tired to answer. And then a sound, a soft creak. Nothing dangerous, just the wood adjusting, or the palace settling into sleep. You exhale. You are the queen, and you are alone. Sleep comes slowly. It always does. Your body lies still beneath embroidered covers, your face turned to the side, eyes half closed, but your mind continues pacing the corridors you just left behind. Thoughts arrive like servants with no manners barging in at odd angles. A conversation from 3 days ago. The name of a noble woman you pretended to remember. The question of whether the bishop's words this morning were meant for you or simply repeated for effect. You roll onto your back. The ceiling stares down unmoved. The torchlight from the corridor flickers under the crack of your chamber door, casting restless shadows across the stone. You wonder how many queens before you stared at that same pattern of movement, imagining it as wolves or wind or ghosts of decisions unmade. Your bed is large, too large, its emptiness louder than any footsteps. The space beside you has always been cold. Your husband's quarters are on the other side of the palace, closer to the war room, farther from the bedrooms where crying daughters and political migraines wait. You adjust the blanket. It's not uncomfortable, far from it. The linens are of the finest weave, imported from Flanders, washed in rosewater, pressed by hand. The mattress rests on thick cords replaced every month. You are tucked in, protected, pampered. But comfort is not rest. and rest is not peace. Historians still argue whether royal women suffered insomnia due to pressure or privilege. Some say it was the anxiety of diplomacy and isolation. Others claim the lack of physical labor left queens too energetic by night, as if boredom ever meant energy. A breeze finds its way in through the slit of the window. It's cool and smells faintly of charcoal and pine. You remember a hunt from last spring, deer crashing through the trees, hounds barking, you watching from a distance in a hooded cloak. That memory comes and goes, like most do these days. The further you get from them, the smoother their edges become. Easier to stack neatly in your mind like folded linens in a cabinet no one opens anymore. You shift again. The pillow is soft, too soft, like sinking into a lie. You punch it lightly, reshape it into something that can hold your head without swallowing it whole. When you lie back down, it almost feels like a small victory. Outside, the palace keeps breathing. You can hear it. Boots on stone, muffled voices. A cough in a servant's wing. The occasional rustle of a guard adjusting his weight. Life continues, even in half-light, even without you. You used to write in a journal. It sits on the desk now, unopened for weeks. You've stopped recording your days. What's the point? Each one echoes the last meetings, meals, smiles, silences. The only difference is the faces that change, the fashions that rotate, and the letters that come bearing news of deaths you were supposed to be sad about. There's a small mirror on the far wall. You can see the outline of your face in the firelight reflection. You look older at night. Not old, just no longer untouched by time. The lines beside your mouth, the shadows under your eyes, they whisper that you have watched too many winters, heard too many secrets, and laughed only when it cost you nothing. You close your eyes. Try to imagine something else. Once you dreamt of painting. Not as a queen, of course. There are rules about who touches pigment and who commissions it. But as a girl, you would sneak into the workshop after hours and dip your finger in ochre just to see the color stain your skin. You liked the mess, the way it made you real. Dirty, human. You haven't touched a brush in years. Even your letters are clean now. Elegant, predictable. They don't betray your thoughts. That's what the diary was for. And when that stopped, the silence grew roots. You drift, not into dreams, but into a hazy middle ground where thoughts and images lose their edges and float past like strangers in a crowd. You see your mother. She's younger than you are now, laughing at something you don't remember. Her hair is tied back in a ribbon you thought was too plain. You see your daughter, small, curious, standing on her toes to reach the pastry tray at court. You see yourself in a different dress on a different day, nodding at another petition you didn't fully understand. The fire crackles. Time folds. Your breathing slows. You do not fall asleep all at once. It happens in layers, like the gowns you wear, slowly peeling away the waking world until only the hum remains, the hum of night, the hush of stone, the low throb of a life too quiet to echo. And in that space, just before true sleep, you whisper one thing into the dark. No one hears it, but you say it anyway. Morning arrives not with bird song or sunlight, but with a knock. 3 gentle raps at the chamber door, the kind that say, "We know you're asleep, but we also know you must wake." You do not respond. You never do. Your ladies will enter after a minute either way, and they always pretend they didn't see the way you shield your eyes against the dim light, or the lines still pressed into your cheek from the pillow's edge. Your body aches a little, not sharply, just in the quiet, consistent way it always does now. A stiffness in the neck, a heaviness in the knees, a kind of weariness that has nothing to do with tiredness. It's the ache of being expected. The door creaks open. Slippers scuff on the stone floor. A pitcher clinks gently against a bowl. Steam rises. Someone opens a shutter, just a crack, letting in a pale wedge of winter light. You do not look at it. You pretend to still be asleep for just one more breath, maybe 2. And then you sit up. The sheets fall in folds. You let your hair fall to a curtain between you and the world. Someone places slippers at your feet. You step into them automatically. You don't even thank her. Not because you're rude, but because this, like so many things now, has become a ritual beyond speech. You rise. A basin awaits. You wash your face. The water is cold today, sharper than usual. You blink, not from the chill, but from the memory that rides in on it of mountain streams in your youth, of a time when cold meant adventure, not obligation. You say nothing as they comb your hair. You let them braid it in the approved style. You do not suggest a ribbon. The last time you did it became a topic of conversation for 3 full days. Her Majesty seems spirited lately, they'd said. Spirited, of course, meaning inconvenient. You dress. Today's gown is plum-colored with sleeves like scrolls and a collar that scratches a little if you breathe too deeply. You are laced in. Each pull is deliberate, not tight enough to bruise, just enough to remind you this is not your body anymore. It is a vessel, a symbol, a standard bearer for good taste and restraint. Historians still argue whether queens had true influence over fashion trends or simply wore what was dictated by their tailors and ministers. Some claim queens chose fabrics and colors with intention to signal allegiances or rebellions. Others suggest your wardrobe was as curated as your words, stylish, yes, but sterile. Breakfast is waiting, not that you're hungry. The tray includes a poached egg, a bit of stewed apple, and a round of toasted bread with butter so pale it's nearly white. You take small bites, not because you must, but because there's something about eating what is prepared for you that feels like accepting your place. You glance at the morning reports. Shipments delayed. Roads too muddy. A minor noble has named his newborn son after the king, and expects a reward. You make a note beside the page, send silver cup. You could send gold, but silver says you're gracious, not indulgent. A bird lands on the windowsill. You look at it. A sparrow, maybe. Its chest puffs against the cold. It chirps once, then flutters off again. You wish you could follow it. Not for escape, just for change. The kind of motion that doesn't require a reason. You stand. A woman waits in the doorway. She curtsies. You nod. It's time. The day begins again. You walk the hall with the polished floor, the one that reflects your steps, but not your face. Tapestries hang from either side, some with scenes of past victories, others with mythical creatures that no longer scare anyone. You pass them without looking. The throne room looms ahead. Today there is a dispute to settle, a land issue. Two men shouting politely about 3 trees and a cow. You sit. You listen. You nod. You ask a question that sounds informed. It isn't really, but it's the kind that makes them feel heard. The steward reads out a document. The herald announces a decree. One man sighs. The other smiles. Justice has been done, or at least has looked like it. You leave before the applause dies down. That's another ritual. Never stay long enough to become part of the moment. Queens are meant to hover above time, not inside it. Back in your chambers, the fire is burning again. Someone has placed flowers in the vase by the window. White ones. You don't know their name. You never do. But you appreciate the gesture. You sit, not on the throne, just in a regular chair. Wooden, slightly too straight. You think of the letter still unread from the night before. You reach for it. Open it. It's from someone you barely remember. A lady from the coast. She writes in careful script about the cold, her husband's injury, her daughter's marriage prospects. She ends the letter with, "We pray for your majesty's continued health and joy." You fold the letter and place it beside the rosemary. You'll write back later, maybe. There is no true afternoon for a queen, just an extended series of obligations dressed in finer lighting. After the letter, you are whisked away again. Not physically. No one drags a queen. But one request leads to the next, a blessing for a newly married couple. A short walk in the outer gardens with a visiting noblewoman who smells like too much lavender, and a stiff portrait sitting that somehow still manages to feel longer than childbirth. You are not expected to speak much during these moments, but you are expected to exist, fully, poised, decorative, yet radiant, always observant, never reactive. You sit for the painter. Again, the studio is drafty. The cushion beneath you feels like it was designed more for looks than comfort, which ironically makes it a perfect metaphor for the entire day. You hold the pose, head tilted slightly, lips, just parted eyes, gazing somewhere noble and far off. The artist hums softly as he mixes pigments. You don't mind him. He's one of the few who treats you like an object, but doesn't pretend otherwise. That honesty is refreshing. You glance at the partially finished canvas. You don't recognize yourself. Historians still argue whether royal portraiture captured essence or only propaganda. Some say the eyes of queens told their truth through oil and brush. Others insist the entire thing was just pageantry, flattened into pigments approved by council. Your spine aches. You are not allowed to shift. Queens don't fidget. Finally, the session ends. You thank the artist. He bows. You leave. Next comes the courtyard stroll, a pleasant walk that involves 3 ladies in waiting, 1 translator for the foreign guest, and a priest who insists on reminding you what the lilies in the fountain symbolize. You nod politely as he speaks of purity. You try not to laugh when the translator botches the word and accidentally praises your fertility instead. Your ladies stifle giggles. The priest pretends not to notice. The guest doesn't know the difference. You walk on. By the time you return to the palace, your feet are sore in a way that feels personal. You retreat to your private room and remove your shoes. One of your maids gasps softly. She's never seen a queen barefoot before. You tell her it's fine. She nods. Still, she averts her eyes, like you've exposed something sacred or broken an unwritten rule. You sit on the edge of the bed. For a moment, you do nothing. You just breathe. The room smells faintly of wood smoke and rose oil. Outside, you can hear the clatter of a wheelbarrow being pushed across uneven cobbles. A distant dog barks once, then falls silent. You consider not going to dinner tonight, but that would cause whispers, and whispers, you've learned, always lead to questions. Better to show up and eat nothing than stay in and become the main course of conversation. So you rise again, dress again, paint the mask again. Dinner is quieter this time. A smaller table, fewer candles, more space between conversations. You sit beside the same general as before, but he's lost his appetite for stories today. You almost miss them. Halfway through the meal, a messenger arrives with news from the border. He kneels, holds out a scroll. The steward takes it, reads, nods, says, "Nothing urgent." Everyone breathes a little easier. You smile like you knew it would be fine all along. After dessert, a custard tart that you only pretend to enjoy, you excuse yourself once more. Your maid waits in the corridor with a candle already lit. She walks you back in silence. You reach your chambers. She places the candle by the hearth curtsies and leaves. You do not stop her. You begin removing the pins from your hair. One by one, each makes a soft click as it lands on the vanity. Your scalp sighs when the weight lifts. You lean forward, peer into the polished metal mirror, and see someone else looking back. Not a stranger, not exactly, just a version of yourself you never got to know properly. You speak aloud to no one. Are you tired? The echo does not answer. You smile anyway, because it doesn't matter. You're still the queen. Night returns like a visitor you didn't invite but can't turn away. You stand by the window, letting the cold seep through the glass to remind yourself that something outside this palace still exists. Below, the torches lining the inner wall sputter in the wind. Shadows of the guards stretch long across the snow-dusted stones. One of them pauses to adjust his cloak. He looks up, maybe just scanning the battlements, but for a moment, it feels like he sees you. You take a step back, just in case. Your gown rustles softly. The room is too quiet for such a sound. Every fold of fabric becomes a whisper. Every movement echoes. You wonder what silence felt like before you had to perform in it. On the writing desk sits a tray of correspondence, letters, reports, pleas for favor, dull things mostly, requests for grain, disputes over grazing rights, a young widow asking if she might marry again without offending the spirit of her late husband. You flip through them without reading closely. You'll answer some tomorrow. Maybe. Probably not the widow. You light the second candle. The glow is warm golden. It doesn't fill the room, but it softens the corners, blurs the edges of the evening. Your reflection in the mirror flickers. For a moment, she looks less like a queen and more like a girl playing dress-up. The illusion passes quickly. You open a box of trinkets. Inside, a button from a childhood cloak, a smooth pebble from a river near your mother's estate, a dried flower pressed flat between waxed parchment. You run a finger along each one slowly, as if touching them might pull something old and sacred back into your present. It doesn't, but you try anyway. Historians still argue whether queens kept private tokens out of sentiment or strategy, a way to remember who they were, or to remind themselves never to be that person again. You place the box back on the shelf, gently. You do not close the lid. You undress alone tonight. Your ladies offered, but you wave them off with a smile. It's not defiance. It's just peace. There's a kind of quiet dignity in peeling off the layers yourself. Each loop unfastened, each ribbon untied, feels like a small rebellion, a reclamation of space, of skin, of self. You step out of the gown. The chemise underneath clings to your shape, not in a flattering way, just in a real way. You catch sight of your arms in the mirror and notice how soft they've become. Not weak, but unfamiliar, like someone else's limbs attached to a body you remember. You sit on the edge of the bed. No one speaks. You take out the old prayer book. The leather cover is cracked in places. It smells of dust and lavender. You don't read the words, you just hold it. Let its weight remind you of something still anchored in all this ceremony. The wind picks up outside. The shutters creak. Somewhere in the palace a door slams, then silence again. You lie down, not gracefully, not like a painting, just tired, fully human. The blankets are heavy tonight, not physically, emotionally. You pull them over your chest, your shoulders, your chin. You leave your face exposed to the cool air, like a compromise with the dark. You close your eyes. The fire pops once, then settles. You think of tomorrow, of the visitors expected, of the speech you'll give, of the dress they want you to wear, of the smile they want you to use. It's already waiting in your jaw, aching to be released. You don't dread it, not exactly. But you do wonder sometimes what would happen if you simply didn't show up. Would anyone come knocking? Would they whisper? Would they miss you? Or just your presence? You exhale. Sleep does not arrive yet, but its footsteps are closer. You can feel them brushing the edge of your thoughts. Another day has passed, not dramatically, not triumphantly, just passed. And somehow that feels like the most honest ending of all. You dream of an orchard, not the royal kind manicured and catalogued with plaques and pruning schedules. No, this one is wild. Apples too high to reach branches, tangled roots exposed and sun-bleached. You walk barefoot, though you don't remember taking off your shoes. The grass is soft in patches and scratchy in others, and the trees sway like they're breathing. There's no crown on your head, no name on your lips, just the wind, the apples, and the sound of something rustling beyond the hedges. You wake slowly. The fire has burned down to orange lumps. A new log has been added. Someone came in while you slept and stoked it quietly without waking you. You wonder if they looked at your face while you dreamed. Wonder if they imagined what a queen dreams of. You almost hope they did. Let them think it's dragons, or diplomacy, or destiny, not apples. You stretch in the half-dark. One hand finds the edge of the quilt. The other brushes the ribbon of your nightgown. It feels foreign against your skin. You think of the orchard again. There were no ribbons there, no lace, just breeze and bark and mud. You sit up. The cold sneaks into your sleeves. Your breath clouds the air just slightly. A sign that morning is not far off, but hasn't arrived yet. The space between darkness and light, this is the only time you feel entirely yourself. Not performing, not preparing, just existing. You light a candle, careful not to let the flame catch too fast. It flickers, then steadies. You hold it up to your face. Watch the shadows stretch. In the mirror, you look older than last night, but wiser too. Maybe. You walk to the desk. There's still one letter left unopened from yesterday. It's sealed with green wax, the mark of your sister's steward. You break it. The parchment is stiff from winter air. Her handwriting dances like it always has. Too many loops, too much confidence in her vowels. She writes about her baby. He's teething, keeps her up at night. She envies your peace. You almost laugh. You peaceful. You who hasn't slept more than 4 hours, uninterrupted in a decade. You write back with warmth and a lie. You say the palace is quiet. You say your days are fulfilling. You say you're happy. Because what else can you say? That the crown weighs heavier each year. That every event feels like deja vu draped in velvet. Historians still argue whether royal letters were expressions of truth or just another performance. Some claim queens confided in their sisters. Others say the paper bore only what the throne approved. You seal the reply. Red wax, your own crest. Then you tuck it into the basket for the morning dispatch and step away from the desk. You don't need shoes. Not yet. Instead, you walk barefoot across the rugs, savoring the way your feet remember the weave. Each knot is a memory. Each frayed edge a reminder of time passing. You return to the window. Outside, the sky is shifting. Not bright yet, but no longer black. That in-between color, blue with a whisper of warmth, a promise of day without the burden of proof. You press your palm against the glass. It's colder than you expected, but that's fine. It wakes you up in the right kind of way. Not alarm, not panic, just clarity. Behind you, the chamber door clicks open. One of your maids, the quiet one, enters. She curtsies halfway, holding a tray with a cup of hot water and a slice of lemon. You thank her softly. She blushes, as if you've sung to her. You sip the water. It tastes like morning. The maid places your slippers at your feet. You don't move yet. She waits. You glance over, and she understands. She bows and backs away. You are alone again. You finish the cup, set it down, and step into the day. But not with dread, not with duty, with acceptance. The orchard may never be real again. But for now, this glass, this cup, this flame, they are yours. And that for a queen is something. The sun finally crests the horizon, and like clockwork, so do the responsibilities. A gentle knock comes at the door. Not urgent, not apologetic, just expected. You answer with a wordless hum habit, more than permission. Your ladies in waiting enter already speaking softly to one another. Their voices rising and falling like a tide you have no power to stop. They're carrying today's dress, not the one you requested. That one was deemed too informal for the visitors expected. Instead, they've chosen a gown of silver brocade embroidered with lilies. It weighs nearly as much as a child and has sleeves that could catch the wind and carry you off if you stood on the palace roof. You say nothing. You've learned not to waste breath on objections that won't be honored. They begin the process. You stand there as they prepare you like an altar. Each layer is added with practiced efficiency. Chemise stays, petticoats, underskirt, overskirt, corset, overdress, jewelry. Your arms are raised and lowered like a doll's. They comb your hair into submission. A twist, a braid, a scattering of pins. One catches your scalp. You flinch. They apologize, but you smile, don't want to fluster them. They're only doing their job. You, after all, are the one pretending this is normal. One of them whispers that your skin looks especially radiant today. You thank her. You wonder how much of that radiance is exhaustion wrapped in powder and perfume. When they finish, you take one step just to test the dress's range of motion. It's minimal. You'll be doing a lot of sitting today. The morning meal is brought to your solar instead of the hall. A small mercy. On the tray, stewed pears, barley bread, and a soft cheese wrapped in herbs. You eat 3 bites mostly for appearance. Queens are expected to be elegant even in appetite. As you chew, a steward enters with the day's itinerary. You already know most of it by heart. A religious envoy at 10, a diplomatic gift exchange at noon, an embroidery inspection in the great hall afterward, because, of course, nobles' wives have sent their handiwork and expect your approval. The politics of thread are just as tangled as those of land. You nod, making mental room for each event. The steward bows and leaves. You glance out the window. The gardens are covered in frost. Beneath the cold, the roses are still there, pretending to sleep. Just like you move to the chapel for your morning prayers, not because you're devout, although once long ago you might have been, but because queens are always seen kneeling, never questioning. You light a candle. Its scent is faintly beeswax, but mostly memory. You close your eyes, murmur the familiar words. They don't feel sacred anymore, but they do feel safe, like a blanket woven from repetition. Historians still argue whether queens truly believed or merely performed belief to soothe a restless court. Some letters hint at secret crises of faith. Others overflow with poetic piety. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle where most human truths live. You finish the prayer, rise, and brace yourself. The walk to the audience chamber is long, not in distance, just in atmosphere. Every footstep echoes like a question. Every servant you pass averts their eyes just slightly, deference or discomfort. Hard to say. You enter. The envoy is already there. Robed in color, not commonly seen here, deep blue with silver trim. He smells faintly of cardamom. His eyes dart once to your crown, then settle lower. He bows. You nod. Diplomatic pleasantries follow. He offers a scroll. You accept it with gloved hands. You say something polite about shared blessings and mutual respect. He responds with equal vagueness. Neither of you believe these words will change the world, but they are expected and therefore sacred. You offer a gift in return, a box of hand-stitched altar cloths. He receives them with exaggerated reverence, probably already thinking where he'll re-gift them next. The moment ends. You move on. The embroidery inspection is exactly as tedious as it sounds. 10 different samplers, all variations of vines, birds, and over-ambitious lions that look vaguely like overfed cats. You smile. You nod. You compliment the tightness of the stitch. You invent kind things to say about beige threadwork. You hope your face does not betray the way your mind is quietly drifting elsewhere, back to the orchard, to the letter, to the firelight. You finish. You rise. You exhale slowly, because today isn't over yet, and you are still always on display. You retreat to your chambers at last, but retreat is too generous a word. It's more like a pause, a reset, a brief private intermission before the next wave of presence must be summoned. 2 guards stand on either side of your door, as always. Their armor glints even in the dull hallway light. You nod. They don't move. You don't expect them to. Inside, the warmth is tentative. A fire has been coaxed back to life in the hearth, though it leans heavily toward embers. One of the maids had probably slipped in ahead of you, arranged the pillows, refreshed the basin. You don't see her now. She's learned to vanish before you enter, like magic, but sadder. You sit not on the grand velvet chair, but the low stool by the fire. You roll your shoulders, unpin your hair, let it fall. You rub your temples slowly. The crown's not heavy, but the idea of it is. It never really comes off. Even when you're here alone, even when your head is bare and your feet are cold on the tiled floor. Someone brings tea. You don't hear them enter, but you hear the cup placed on the table. You glance up just enough to acknowledge the cup is steaming, laced with something floral, not strong, not sweet, just there. You take a sip. It tastes like waiting. You stare into the fire. Let your thoughts wander, just a bit. Nothing dangerous. No dreams of escape or change. Just meandering images. A red bird outside the window. The soft velvet of a ribbon. You once had the smell of fresh linen in spring. You remember your mother's hands. Not her voice, not her advice. Just her hands, how they braided your hair, tucked bread into your palm, wiped ink smudges from your nose when you tried to copy letters. Her hands were always warm, always busy. You look at your own hands now. Rings, polished nails, a tiny ink stain near your knuckle. They look powerful. They don't feel powerful. Historians still argue whether queens truly held influence behind closed doors or whether they were simply well-dressed vessels for other people's decisions. Some cite letters, others point to court records, but no scroll ever captured the way a queen sat alone in silence, deciding whether or not to care. There's a knock, not the urgent kind, just ceremonial. It's the steward again. Dinner is being served. You don't respond immediately. You let the silence stretch just long enough to remind them that your time is your own. Then you rise, smooth your skirts, tuck your hair back, put the mask on again, though you never really took it off. The hall is already full. Nobles' guests, the foreign envoy from earlier, now changed into slightly more elaborate robes. There's music in the background, the kind you're not supposed to notice but are expected to smile along to. A gentle drone of lutes and voices. You take your seat at the long table's head. All eyes flick to you, then flick away. The meal begins. Trenched bread roasted fowl, a pottage of barley and greens, something gelatinous and pink you can't identify. You eat with care, not hunger. You nod at toasts, laugh when required. You ask after children you've never met and won't remember. They love you for this, not because they know you, because you fulfill the idea of you. You scan the table. The envoy is speaking animatedly to one of the younger lords. Your lady in waiting is whispering to the cupbearer. A visiting duke gestures too wildly and nearly knocks over a dish. No one sees it except you, and you mercifully look away. Dessert arrives. Almond cake with citrus glaze. The flavors are meant to symbolize the season, or the mood, or something equally poetic. You take one bite. It's too sweet. You take a sip of wine. It's too dry. You fold your hands in your lap and wait for the moment when you can leave. When the music dims and the guests begin to yawn and the steward signals discreetly that your presence is no longer required, you rise with grace, with practiced dignity. You exit the hall to a chorus of bows and smiles. You don't look back. You return to your chamber. The fire has gone out again. You don't relight it. You sit on the edge of the bed and breathe. The bed doesn't look inviting, but it's the only place you can go. You don't climb in right away. Instead, you walk to the window. The night sky outside is clear. A full moon hangs low, fat, and yellow, like a coin you can't spend. The stars are unusually sharp tonight, pinpricks of silver scattered over deep blue silk. You press your fingertips to the cold glass again, just like this morning, and wonder if it's the same moon your sister saw from her manor, if her baby cried under it, if she's also awake, holding a candle in the dark, thinking of you. Behind you, the chamber is silent, except for the faint creak of wood as the building settles. No sounds of servants now, no rustling skirts, just the long, quiet breath of stone walls, remembering every word ever spoken inside them. You move away from the window, slowly. Your nightgown lies folded across the foot of the bed, not lacy this time. A simple one, wool thin, but warm. You shrug out of the elaborate day gown, the corset that slips and stays. Each layer you shed makes you feel a little smaller, a little more like a ghost of yourself. You sit, then lie back. The mattress dips under your weight. It's firmer than you remember. You adjust the pillow. A strand of hair sticks to your cheek. You brush it away. And now you're still. This is the moment every day collapses into. This stretch of minutes between performance and unconsciousness. It would be comforting if not for the thoughts, because now they rise, quietly at first, then louder. The ones you spend all day suppressing with ceremony and corsets. What are you really doing? Is this life, or just a very long costume change between birth and death? You stare at the canopy overhead. It's been embroidered with stars and vines and little gold birds. You never noticed the birds before. Now one of them catches your eye. The stitching is crooked just slightly. A feather off-center. A beak that tilts too far left. It comforts you more than it should, because that imperfection is yours. A reminder that something in this room wasn't perfect. Something wasn't approved by the council or inspected by the steward. It slipped through. It survived. Historians still argue whether queens found rebellion in tiny details, whether they wore the wrong earrings on purpose, whether they wrote secret messages in lemon juice and sunlight. Most agree There were rebellions, but few agree on the shape. You shift under the blankets, pull them higher. You close your eyes, but the room doesn't disappear. Instead, it lingers behind your lids, the flicker of candlelight, the smell of smoke and lemon balm, the weight of your own thoughts pressing into your chest like a second body. Then, from outside, a sound, not a cry or a shout, just the distant hoot of an owl. You smile. It's the most honest sound you've heard all day. Not curated, not meant for anyone. Just a creature calling into the dark, expecting nothing back. You open your eyes again. The fire's out, but a faint glow from the moon slips across the floorboards. It looks like spilled milk. You watch it creep slowly across the room, almost like it's alive. And that's when it hits you, not like a realization, but like a soft weight settling on your chest. This life, for all its cold and boredom and velvet walls, is still yours. You may not choose the color of your gown. You may not speak freely at feasts. You may not run barefoot through orchards anymore. But you choose this moment, this breath, this act of being still. That's something. You roll to your side, tuck your hands under your cheek, and finally allow the sleep to come. Not forced, not coaxed, just accepted. Like the crooked bird, like the moon, like yourself. Morning, again, the light creeps into your chamber like it's afraid to wake you. But wake you it does, gently, insistently, through a slit in the curtains you don't remember leaving open. Your eyes open slowly. Not from rest, just routine. Your body feels heavier than yesterday. But queens don't get to stay in bed just because the world feels off. You sit up. The room smells like cold ash and lavender. The fire is out. The tea is gone. The corners are filled with yesterday. You swing your legs over the side of the bed and let your feet touch the stone floor. It's not icy, just indifferent. A knock again. Like clockwork, you hum your permission. They enter. They never speak first. You're not sure if that's protocol or politeness, but either way, the silence wears thin. They open the wardrobe, pull fabric, begin again. The colors today are deeper, wine red and cream. The necklace they've selected has a garnet that catches light like an open eye. They dress you, paint you, smooth you into yourself. You nod at your reflection once. She doesn't nod back. The day begins with news softly spoken, but jarring. One of the lower court barons has died. Not important politically, but symbolically, a reminder that the court is aging, that the world is still moving, that someone else will sit in that now empty seat. You write a letter of condolence. It is brief, polite, composed. You do not know his wife personally, but you say all the things expected of a grieving monarch. You finish with your signature. It looks practiced, regal, nothing like your childhood handwriting, which once dotted a page with tiny flowers and uneven lines. You move to the great hall. A painter is waiting. He's come to sketch preliminary studies for the new portrait. The last one is 6 years old. People say it no longer captures your maturity. You sit on the designated chair. He fusses with brushes, chalk angles. He asks you to look slightly left. You do. He squints, starts sketching. The room is quiet, except for the scratch of charcoal and the occasional shuffle of servants trying to appear invisible. You hold still for minutes, maybe longer. Your back aches, your lips tremble slightly from being held just so. You imagine yourself becoming a statue, perfect, unblinking, carved in expectations. He stops. He says something vague about capturing light and asks to return tomorrow. You nod. Another performance down. Another image set in motion. Another version of you that will be hung on a wall and mistaken for the truth. You eat lunch alone, not for privacy, but because no one's scheduled to join you. Bread, soup, a piece of fruit that's been peeled into a spiral like beauty was something even an apple should strive for. You eat slowly, not for enjoyment, just delay. You glance at the fireplace. It's empty, too warm to light, too quiet not to miss. Historians still argue whether queens had true moments of solitude or whether someone was always listening from behind a curtain. Diaries from minor nobles hint at hidden doors, secret listeners, polite surveillance disguised as etiquette. But no diary ever captured the silence in a room where you're the only one breathing. You sigh, you rise, you head to the gardens. At last, somewhere you can walk without explanation. The wind brushes your cheek like a hand that hasn't forgotten how to be kind. The scent of wet earth and distant herbs fills your lungs. You follow the path, not because it leads somewhere, but because it doesn't. There, under a gnarled olive tree, you sit. Not like a queen, like a woman. You remove your gloves. Let your fingers feel bark. You close your eyes. And for a moment, no one needs you, and that is everything. You're still beneath the olive tree when they find you. Of course they do. You're never missing, just momentarily unobserved. In your world, even privacy has a time limit. A rustle of silk and clipped footsteps tells you that someone has noticed your absence and decided it matters. Your lady in waiting arrives with carefully folded concern on her face. Your Majesty, she says the court physician awaits. You don't sigh. Queens don't sigh. You merely nod and rise, brushing a fallen leaf from your lap like it insulted you. The hem of your overdress whispers along the path as you follow her, past the rose trellises, past marble fountains pretending to be natural springs, past the statue of your great-grandmother who once poisoned a duke and was never punished for it. You admire that. She left a legacy of both lace and terror. Inside, the physician waits. Not the old one, the kind man who smelled like boiled mint and onion soup. No, this is a new one. Younger, sharper, with eager eyes and a beard that's trying too hard. He bows too low, calls you exalted, asks how you feel. You lie. You say fine. He takes your pulse anyway, presses your wrist like it's a button that might reveal a deeper truth, taps your back, peers into your eyes, recommends dried chamomile, honeyed water, and reduced stress. You almost laugh. Reduce stress. You're married to a kingdom. You sleep next to diplomacy and wake up beside betrayal. Your breakfast is presented alongside 3 petitions, 2 complaints, and a reminder to write a letter to the Queen of Navarre. You haven't digested in years. Still you thank him. Smile regally. Dismiss him with a graceful nod that says both I appreciate your concern and don't come back unless I'm actively dying. After he leaves, you don't return to your chamber. You turn the other way, toward the East Tower. No one goes to the East Tower anymore. The tapestries are faded, and the steps creak, and it smells a little like damp parchment and forgotten books, which is precisely why you love it. You climb slowly, fingers trailing the stone wall, the cold, a quiet contrast to the warmth you perform every day. At the top, a door, slightly warped. You nudge it open. Inside, the old library. Not the public library, the gilded one for foreign ambassadors to admire. This one's real. The shelves sag with age, the books smell of oil and dust and stories no one's read aloud in decades. There's no fire lit, but the room holds its own warmth. Maybe it's memory. Or maybe old books radiate the heat of all the hands that held them. You sit in your favorite spot, an arched window, with a cushion that has long since surrendered its stuffing. You pull a book from the shelf at random. It opens to the middle like it remembers where someone once left off. You read 2 lines, not because you're trying to learn, but because you want to feel your mind stretch. Historians still argue whether medieval queens were literate in any real sense. Some claim you merely memorized prayers. Others insist you read state letters in Latin and wrote poems in secret. You don't care about their debates. You know your own hands. You know how it feels to write something no one else will ever read. The wind taps the glass. You pause. Look out. The garden below is perfect. Too perfect. Trimmed hedges, obedient flower beds. Everything symmetrical, orderly, subdued, like you're supposed to be. You close the book, and then you do something unqueenly. You remove your shoes, bare feet on cold stone. It shocks you, grounds you. You walk across the room without a sound. Pull another book, one about stars. You always liked stars because they don't care who's king. You remember asking your tutor why Orion was always chasing something he couldn't catch. He said it was a lesson. You thought it was a warning. Your thoughts drift to your sister, who writes letters in bright blue ink and always encloses pressed flowers from wherever she's been. To the kitchen girl, who once taught you to braid your hair in secret because court hairstyles gave you migraines. To your reflection every morning, wondering if you'll recognize her tomorrow. You don't cry. Queens don't cry. But you do close your eyes, just for a moment. And in that quiet, you let go. Not of the crown, just of the weight. It'll still be there when you return. You wander back down the staircase, slower this time, feeling the stone underfoot, listening to the sound your dress makes when no one else is around. Back through the servants' corridor, through the panel behind the portrait, and into your room. No one notices you've been gone. Or if they do, they pretend not to. A letter waits on your writing desk. You recognize the seal, your sister again. You break the wax. Read her words. She's learning to ride a horse side saddle. She says it's awkward and terrifying and makes her feel like a decorative vase on a runaway cart. You smile. She ends with, "I miss when you were just my sister and not a country." You fold the letter gently, place it in the carved box behind your jewelry, and for a brief, fragile second, you are not a symbol. You are just a girl who read books in towers and missed her sister and wished that sometimes someone would ask how you really felt. You lie back on the couch. Exhale slowly. Even queens need quiet rebellions. You don't get to stay in the library. Of course not. Duty always finds you, even if you bury yourself in parchment and ink and sit in a room no one else remembers exists. It knocks politely at first, then hammers. This time it arrives as a footman, apologetic but firm, reminding you of the noon council meeting. You nod. Of course. You knew. You always know. You just hoped maybe someone would forget. Back in your chamber, the maids descend on you like a storm of practiced efficiency. A new dress, stiffer than the last. Brocade sleeves with embroidered lions. Your husband's house, not yours. Your hair twisted into something ceremonial. A jeweled circlet added to remind everyone where you belong. The throne room is warm, but not in a pleasant way. It's heavy with the heat of too many bodies and too much tension. Fireplaces roar on opposite ends. Tapestries trap the warmth like guilt. Every noble has brought their politics in with them, like damp cloaks that will not dry. You sit in your chair, technically not a throne, but grand enough to send a message and try not to fidget. That's not queenly. Your husband speaks first, droning through matters of land disputes, grain tariffs, and the latest report of banditry near the northern pass. You nod at the right places, raise a brow here and there. Your face does the work of 12 advisors, but your mind floats. You wonder how much this robe cost, how many villagers it could have fed. You wonder how much of this conversation is theater. You know the answer. Almost all of it. Everyone is performing. The Lord arguing about border grazing rights doesn't care about cows. He's posturing to assert dominance. The Baroness who gasped at the tax increase is already collecting bribes in another county. You smile politely through it all. Historians still argue whether queens had true influence in council chambers or were merely decorative presences. Some point to letters and treaties signed in royal hands. Others argue you were used as a seal, pressed onto things to make them appear official. You've done both. You've smiled while your opinion was ignored. You've also whispered into ears just before the vote. Influence, you've learned, doesn't always need a chair at the table. Sometimes it just needs proximity to the right jug of wine. A messenger arrives, interrupting the flow. A small skirmish, he says. Not a war, not even a battle. Just a disagreement between two minor houses. A few deaths. A burned mill. You glance at your husband. He frowns, says the expected things. Unfortunate. We'll investigate. Justice will be served. You want to ask if justice wears armor or carries coin, but you don't. Instead, you offer your soothing voice, something about mourning and peace. They nod. That's your role. The human balm applied to state wounds. Later in the antechamber, you stand near the brazier for warmth. It's still winter in the stones, no matter what the fire claims. A young scribe hands you a document for review. You take it not because you must, but because it's one of the few things you can control. Your signature, your edits, small rebellions, inked in neat lines. You scan the document. It's about road repair, dull but necessary. You make a note in the margin. Include local labor. Offer bread, not just coin. The scribe looks surprised. You don't explain. You never do. Back in the corridor, you hear laughter. Male, loud, confident. Your husband and his advisors talking about hunting, about dogs and antlers and the thrill of the chase. You remember being told you were lucky to marry him, that he was kind, fair, strong, all true. And yet, you miss being alone in that tower more than you miss your wedding day. You return to your chamber before supper. No one stops you. No one even notices. The robe comes off with help. Your hair unravels with pins clinking into a silver bowl. You sit in your nightgown by the fire, finally allowed to shiver. A knock. Not a servant. It's the cook's boy, sent with a tray. Not ordered, just sent. On it, a bowl of spiced lentils, a heel of fresh bread. A note. You didn't eat at lunch. I thought maybe you were tired of roast again. You smile. Real. Tiny kindness. Unspoken. Not protocol. Human. You eat every bite. And for a brief moment it tastes better than any feast. Because it wasn't about duty. It was about being seen. You wake up before the bells. Not because someone called for you, but because your body is so used to being summoned that it doesn't bother waiting anymore. Outside, the sky is the soft gray of indecision, neither night nor morning. The kind of sky that makes you feel like time itself is tired. You stare at the ceiling for a while, counting the wooden beams. You know each knot and crack like old friends. No one should be awake this early, but queens don't sleep like normal people. You rise without calling for help. You dress yourself, not out of rebellion, but because you want to remember what it's like to do something quietly without choreography. The underdress is softer than usual. You choose it on purpose. The overcoat is plain. No embroidery. No weight. Just warmth. You slip into the corridor barefoot. The stones are cold. Not punishing. Just honest. They don't pretend to be anything they're not. You pass a maid, dozing in a chair shawl falling off one shoulder. You don't wake her. You envy her. You walk toward the chapel. Not because you're especially pious this morning, but because it's one of the only places that doesn't expect you to speak. The chapel smells like wax and stone and breath held too long. You sit in the last row, the one with the cracked seat, and you pray, not with words, not with names or petitions, just with silence. Historians still argue whether medieval queens were truly devout or simply went through the motions for show. Some cite elaborate church patronage. Others whisper about secret skepticism. You've done both. Built altars, questioned heaven, lit candles without knowing why. You leave before the priest arrives. Back in your chamber, letters await. One from your cousin. She's getting married again. Husband number 3. You try not to judge. Another from a merchant woman, thanking you for sponsoring the rebuilding of a village well. She enclosed a hand-drawn map and a small pouch of dried lavender. You press it to your nose. It smells like somewhere else. But the third letter, you hesitate. The seal is broken. That means someone read it first. Of course they did. You're not allowed secrets. It's from a young girl, not a noble, just a girl. She wrote in careful, crooked letters asking why you never smile in portraits. Says she saw you once from the market square, thought your hair looked like sunlight, and wondered if queens ever get lonely. You fold the letter 3 times, press it against your chest, and yes, you do. You attend court later that day, sit through reports about grain yields, a dispute over pig theft, and one very long argument about the color of a nobleman's new crest. You nod at the right places. You smile when expected. But inside your thoughts, keep returning to that girl's question. Do queens get lonely? You remember your wedding night, how the room smelled like rose oil and tension. You remember your first winter in this castle, the silence so thick it felt like another person. You remember losing a pregnancy and having to smile through dinner 2 hours later. You remember learning to keep your thoughts folded tight like letters never meant to be sent. Your husband is kind, in a distant, well-meaning way. He asks about your day. You tell him. He listens. Then he nods and tells you about hunting dogs or trade routes. You kiss each other good night like it's a treaty renewal. But when the fire dims, you lie awake and stare at the canopy above your bed and imagine what it would be like to laugh with your mouth open, to dance in a kitchen, to read stories out loud, and not care if the endings are happy. You once asked your lady-in-waiting what she missed most about her old life. She said, picking apples without asking. You understood that more than you let on. Now in the quiet before sleep, you imagine answering that girl's letter. You'd write, "Yes, I do get lonely, but I've learned to find company in quiet things. A page turning, a candle flickering, a memory showing up unannounced." You'd add, "Smiling in portraits is hard when no one asks if you're okay." You'd add, "But thank you for seeing me." You don't send the letter, but you write it anyway, and that maybe is enough. You're not sure when it started happening, but you've become part of the architecture. People walk past you the way they pass columns or tapestries. They nod, bow, curtsy, but rarely see. You are a fixture, regal, present, polished, predictable. You wonder sometimes how long you'd have to stand perfectly still before someone mistook you for a statue. This is the strange thing about power. The more of it people believe you have, the less they treat you like a person. Your signature can shift taxes. Your words can start rumors or end negotiations. But when you say, "I'm tired," someone offers you a pillow, not a break. When you say, "I'm lonely," they suggest writing more letters. Power doesn't protect you from human needs. It just gives you prettier tools to pretend they don't exist. Today is one of the ceremonial days. You're led step by step into the great hall where nobles have gathered in their finest silks and smug expressions. The throne room smells like expensive perfumes battling each other for dominance. You wear a gown heavy enough to dent the floor. Your crown pinches at the temples. You smile like it doesn't. The occasion is nothing urgent. A minor lord has come to renew his pledge of loyalty. There will be toasts, flattery, and maybe a gifted hawk. You brace yourself. He arrives. He bows. He says the words. Your husband nods. You nod. The hawk is indeed gifted. It stares at you with a knowing wild eye before being handed off to a handler. The court applauds. The room echoes with politeness. Afterwards, as you leave, a young boy, maybe 10 breaks rank, and runs up to you. His nursemaid chases after him in panic, but he doesn't stop. He holds out something in his hand. It's a small, carved, wooden cat, not painted, not polished, but carefully made, with 2 small dots for eyes and a crooked little smile. For you, he says. You crouch. Take it with both hands. What's its name, you ask? He shrugs. It doesn't need one. It just sits with you when you're sad. You nod. That's a good cat. His nursemaid apologizes profusely, but you wave her off. Thank you, you say again. And you mean it. That night you place the wooden cat on your windowsill. It watches the stars with you. You think about all the ways you're supposed to be strong, composed, unshakable. You think about how exhausting that can be. Historians still argue whether queens truly ruled or merely endured, whether their strength was in decisions made or simply in surviving day after day inside cages lined with gold. You lean back. The fire crackles. Your hair is down. Your crown is on the table for once, not on your head. You stare into the flames and remember a time before all this, before diplomacy, before cold bedchambers, before you had to be so very careful all the time. You remember your mother brushing your hair. Her fingers never rushed. She hummed songs with no names. You remember a pet goat named Rella, who used to steal your embroidery thread. You remember the taste of honey straight from the comb. You remember you. That's the hardest part about being queen. It's not the wars, not the politics, not even the loneliness. It's the slow, quiet erosion of self. The way your edges get sanded down by titles and obligations until one day you catch your reflection and think, who is she? Tonight you do something small. You write in your old journal, the one you hide beneath the mattress, the one that smells like lavender and ink. You don't write about state matters or etiquette. You write, I liked the wooden cat. You write, today I felt like myself. You write, that's rare and precious. And for once you don't sign it with your title, just your name, just you. It's snowing again. Not the urgent kind that makes you think of storm shutters or freezing livestock, but the soft kind. The kind that takes its time floating like ash dissolving the world in layers. You watch it from the high window, the way you've watched 100 snows before. Except tonight, this one feels different. Not colder, just quieter. The garden, once so precise and trimmed, is now a field of white, its hedges turned into sleeping shapes. Even the stone lions at the fountain have stopped pretending to be fierce. They wear crowns of snow on their heads, and for once you think they look peaceful. You wonder if they ever get tired of looking brave all the time. You certainly do. No one has called for you tonight. No feast, no council, no ceremonial lighting of the 10th century candle. You're told brings good fortune, though never for you. The palace, for once, has left you alone. Like it remembered you were not a concept or a symbol, but a woman. Tired, alive, and a little sad. You walk barefoot across the chamber. Each step presses a quiet warmth into the stone. You've lit the fire yourself this evening with hands that once stitched dolls and now signed treaties. It crackles with the kind of honesty you rarely hear in conversations. You sit down, not on the throne-like chair near the hearth, but on the floor beside it. You pull the blanket off the couch and drape it around your shoulders like a secret. There's a cup of warm milk nearby, steeped with cinnamon and a bit of crushed nutmeg, a familiar smell. Someone used to make it for you when you were small. You remember their hands, but not their face. Funny how memory keeps warmth and loses names. The wooden cat sits on the windowsill. You brought it there weeks ago. It never asked to be special, but somehow it is. Its crooked smile has seen every one of your recent evenings. You've whispered to it things you wouldn't dare admit to a human. That you miss climbing trees. That sometimes you imagine riding off into the forest and never coming back. That you envy the kitchen girl who sings to herself and forgets to bow. The cat never judges. It just watches. You find that reassuring. You wrap your arms around your knees and rest your chin atop them. The fire licks the shadows gently. The air smells like pine and old books. A single candle burns on your writing desk, though you won't write tonight. You've written enough. Too many letters full of language you don't believe in. Sincerely, in faith, with gratitude. As if those phrases can cover what you really want to say. I'm tired. I'm still here. I need someone to see me. Historians still argue whether queens at court truly wielded influence or were merely figureheads dressed in duty. Some scrolls call them wise beyond their station. Others note they wept behind silk curtains and had names that no one used. But scrolls rarely mention nights like this, the long nothing nights, when even the mirror won't look you in the eye. You lie down fully now, still wrapped in the blanket, letting your cheek press against the woven rug. You can feel its texture coarse but comforting, the kind of imperfection that reminds you it was made by hands, not magic. You breathe slowly. Your ribs lift, fall, lift, fall. Each breath a gentle rebellion against every expectation. Outside, the snow thickens. It coats the castle in silence. The guards walk slower now, their footsteps muffled. Somewhere down the corridor, a door shuts with the softest click. Somewhere else, a dog barks once, then goes still. And in this quiet, you remember things. Not grand events, not coronations or alliances, but little human things, like the way your sister used to braid your hair before you went to chapel, or the way your old tutor used to fall asleep mid-sentence, ink dripping from his quill, or the taste of stolen berries and how the juice stained your lips purple. None of those things made it into the history books, but they made it into you. And that you realize is power too. Not the kind that sits on thrones, but the kind that lets you survive thrones, that keeps a flicker of you alive even when everything else says, be someone else. You reach for the wooden cat and bring it close. It fits perfectly in your palm. Solid, unmoving, comforting. You whisper, thank you. And in the hush that follows you, swear it winks. Just a little. Let the castle fade now. Let the walls blur into softness and the tapestries fall still. Let the wind outside carry away the sounds of duty, of names of things undone. You are not late. You are not behind. You are simply here. Breathe again, slower this time. Feel the way your shoulders sink just a little more with each breath. Let the warmth from the fire travel through the floor into your spine. Let the rhythm of snow outside become your lullaby. You are safe here. The hawk dreams in its perch. The maidens have gone to sleep. The kitchen is dark. No one is waiting for you to decide anything. You've decided enough. Tonight your only task is to rest, to let your bones remember softness, to let your thoughts fall like feathers landing without noise. You are more than your name. You are the story underneath the crown, the silence between royal decrees. You are someone who laughed before they learned how to curtsy. You are someone who once chased fireflies barefoot across a summer field. And that someone, she's still here. She never left. Let her wrap her arms around you now in this final quiet. Let her hum that nameless tune your mother used to sing. Let her rock you slowly, slowly into that vast, safe dark. The stars blink above the snow. The wooden cat watches. And you sleep.